What's the deal with
the Darktide beta? Greetings, all you poxwalkers and skullbreakers. My name's Salamander. I got into the Darktide beta! For a little background, I'm obviously a massive fan of all things Warhammer, if this channel wasn't already indicative of that fact. On top of that, though, I am also a huge fan of online PvE horde shooters. Left 4 Dead 2, Vermintide 2, Payday 2... Man, there's a whole lot of 2s here. Oh, and Deep Rock Galactic, firefight mode in Halo, I guess. The list goes on. Across these games, I've spent thousands of hours slaughtering zombies, rats, bugs, and the most horrible menace of them all, the police. However, the one that always rose to the top of the genre, at least in my mind, was Vermintide 2. With best-in-class first-person melee combat, lovable and iconic characters, and an atmosphere so beautifully executed, you understand completely that no matter how hard the Ubersreich 5 fight, they are doomed to fail, without anyone needing to say the words, "Suicide Mission." Vermintide 2 always blew everything else in the genre out of the water. So, we have the same developer making what is essentially the same game, but in a setting I'm far more familiar with. And there's no Space Marines. I, admittedly, had very high expectations going into this. Expectations the game largely met, but failed to meet in a lot of ways that really matter. But let's start with the good stuff. It's Vermintide 2, but in space. Even though the setting is now space fantasy futuristic with lasguns and psychers and stuff, the focus of the game is still the best-in-class first-person melee combat. Everyone's primary weapon, with the exception of the veteran sharpshooter, is their melee weapon, and the game is designed around you answering most problems with a lifetime sentence to horny jail and a swift bonk. The first major departure from Vermintide 2, though, is that all classes have access to a very similar pool of weapons. There's not much difference between the combat axe and the combat sword, except for the combat sword being just a bit objectively better because it's the only non-Ogryn melee weapon with cleave. Seriously, Ogryn is far and away the best class in the game, but several classes double dip into other classes' weapon pools. Several classes actually get the aforementioned combat sword. This means now, instead of careers being defined by the playstyle differences in the weapons available to them, classes are delineated more along the lines of them having situations where they are contextually better at doing the shoot and stab. Zealot Preacher does the shoot and stab better when they're low on health. Veteran Sharpshooter does the shoot significantly better against weak spots on enemies. Ogryn Skullbreaker just always does the stab better all the time, at the cost of them not having a situation where they're better at doing the shoot. This could be seen as a downside since now classes feel less unique, but it also means they're far more balanced. Instead of each character having one career that everyone kinda knows is just better than the others. The game no longer compares your performance to the performance of your teammates. I often found in Vermintide 2, people would intentionally waste time, camping a spawner instead of helping with the objective purely to pad their numbers so that they could have higher numbers than their teammates. That behavior, though still present among randoms, don't get me wrong, is significantly lessened because the game doesn't indirectly pit you against the rest of your team by showing scorecards at the end of a mission. Anything that can encourage cooperative play in this cooperative video game is a plus in my book, even if it was an unrivaled hit of dopamine to see an endless sea of circled numbers on your scorecard at the end of a mission. The core gameplay loop is as solid as ever, with the repeated cycle of move to X location, kill Y number of enemies, complete Z objective being honed to a razor's edge. However, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It is just a beta, after all. I'm not going to linger on anything I think will get fixed by the time the game comes out, but there's also several things I'm worried won't be, even if the beta build being used is ancient in comparison to the build that's currently being worked on in-house, because the issues aren't easy to fix. They're fundamental design decisions, or as complex as the netcode for the entire game. To get some of those little annoyances out of the way, though, there's some clipping issues with the outfits. The intro voice dialogue often plays over itself.
The cooling system in manufacture on HL 1736 has been sabotaged, leaving the power matrix on the brink. If that factory goes dark, we'll lose a key source of war material.
Subtitles sometimes don't go away. Sometimes the lighting gets a bit f***ed up. It's just a bunch of little things that don't really matter and are so low on the priority list of game devs that they often do only get fixed within the last month or last couple weeks of development. So, what's actually wrong with the game then? Well, 3 things: optimization, netcode, and custom characters. To start, this is a Fat Shark game. Fat Shark is notorious for having games that run like My performance was okay on my 1080. I had to turn the graphics down to low in order to get consistent 60 FPS, but I have a few friends who have 3070s who all had massive performance issues on the game's higher settings. Now, I don't have the technical know-how to understand why this happens exactly, but I noticed my performance was at its worst when there were a ton of particle effects on the screen. My performance almost tripled when I just turned most of that stuff either off or to its lowest possible setting. Except for persistent bodies, that stays on always, no exceptions. Next up, we have networking issues. Yep, this is bad. Like, so bad, in fact, that it often made the game completely unplayable for hours on end. The first day of the beta, I literally did not get a single full game in until my second to last game of the day. The netcode is god-awful, and frankly, it'd be unacceptable for the game's netcode to be even half this bad at launch. To the point that if it does remain this bad for the launch, I'm just gonna keep playing Vermintide 2. Not much else to say here. It's just bad netcode, and it needs to be fixed. The final bad part of the game that I actually do know for a fact won't get fixed is the custom characters. What was the best part of Vermintide 2? Was it the killing rats gameplay, the infinite gear progression grind, the Beastmen DLC? Well, all of those things are good, but none of them are, in my opinion, what keeps people playing the game. You start playing Vermintide 2 because medieval fantasy game about killing rats, hell yeah. You keep playing the game because of the beautifully characterized and written characters. You play the game for the Ubersreich 5. They're more iconic than basically any other lore characters from Warhammer Fantasy, aside from maybe Gotrek and Felix. And that's for good reason. They're amazingly written. The banter they have with each other is personable and funny in a way that only people as thoroughly trauma-bonded as the Ubersreich 5 could be. Barden cheering up the group when they're down in the dumps, Marcus hanging on Saltspire's every word, Carillion's conversation with Barden in Talshorn Keep.
I don't think you really are searching for Carrick Zorn.
Preposterous! You don't know what you're saying.
Don't I? You forget, I've observed your search for some time now.
Spying, is it?
Ah, of course, I'm a Witelgi, that's what we do, so I'm told.
A well-earned slight, by the sound of it.
I don't think you're seeking anything at all, Barden. I think you're avoiding going home. And if I'm right...
Choose your next words carefully.
Then you have my sympathy. That is all. I hope you find whatever it is you're really seeking.
None of that was in the beta. Yes, the player avatars still had conversations in the game, almost all of which were just about how much they didn't like the tech priest. The lengthy backstory you create as part of character creation never got brought up. And the Morning Star is infinitely more lifeless and dull than Talshorn Keep. Why? Because of custom characters. Your character is no longer a handcrafted, self-contained piece of intentional writing. It's a modular character that could be of any shape or background. Because of this, the writers can't write around the special interactions between your character and another character in-game, because your Ogryn and their veteran sharpshooter don't have any history. They won't see each other again after this mission. Your character can't have fun banter with the guy who runs the armory exchange, primarily because he's a servitor, but also because you're essentially an ascended extra. There's nothing substantially different about you in comparison to all of the other hundreds of nearly identical player avatars just running around the ship. Custom characters did not serve to make the player more capable of expressing themselves within the world. It only served to make them disposable. And the game just feels so much more lifeless because of it. Hearing the exact same cookie-cutter dialogue conversations in-game every mission isn't nearly as charming as the well-written, unique dialogues between characters across different missions in Vermintide 2.
Where did we come from? Over the mountains. Where are we going? Over the mountains.
Ah, you got me doing it now.
The game is overwhelmingly more dull and less charming because of it. And all for what? So that I could choose whether or not my Ogryn had a beard? So that I could pick between red or green prison uniforms? That doesn't seem worth it, at least to me. And this almost certainly isn't going to be fixed by time of release unless they fully intend to literally overhaul the entire system and give us a roster of 4 bespoke characters that are equally as well written, personable, and charming as the Ubersreich 5 in the roughly 6 weeks till the game comes out in late November. Thankfully though, once you get into the game and achieve a flow state, a lot of this blends into the background. The game is still really good. In terms of environment designs, it's one of the prettiest games just about ever. As I said earlier, the core loop of traveling through the levels and killing hordes of enemies has been refined to the point of near perfection. But it lacks the sort of soul that Vermintide 2 possessed in spades. It feels so much more lifeless and mass-produced than its predecessor. Darktide is an heir to a big legacy, a legacy that this beta has shown me it isn't fully deserving of yet. And that's the deal with the Darktide beta. Hey, thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video. I started making this video after I put Warhammer's Guilliman Problem on Patreon, but before it went public. So I now have to re-record the intro to address the fact that in less than 24 hours, or actually a bit over 24 hours of that video going live, I reached 1,000 goddamn subscribers. I didn't think that was ever going to actually happen. So the fact that it did, and the fact that it did so suddenly, is just, I'm just so, I'm very humbled and I'm very grateful, and I am so goddamn happy that it's happened the way that it has. Sorry that this video was a lot longer than I will normally want the What's the Deal videos to be, but I had a lot more to say about the game than I thought I did. But all of that seems kind of irrelevant now because of the whole me hitting 1,000 subscribers thing. So, go to my social medias. I will be announcing at some point when the 24-hour live stream will happen. I set the 1,000 goal as like a long-term goal, because I don't normally gain 200 subscribers in like a day, right? But again, thank you so much. Thanks for watching the video. Thanks to all of the new people who've just subscribed. I hope I can make more videos that you think are just as good, if not better, than the video that got you here. And yeah, thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.
Storm log.